Today we're going to be working on this PS4 that was sent in by a customer. It's running really loud, as you can probably hear. And we're not even loaded up in a game yet. And it's running super loud, and it's filthy as well. So we're also going to be giving it a clean. There's going to be dust in the heatsink, I imagine. And because it's so dirty outside, I can't even imagine what it looks like on the inside. We're also going to be replacing the thermal paste and then giving it a good clean. Let's get started. To begin, we're going to remove the top cover, which we can do by lifting the top panel from the top, sticking your fingers right under where it says PS4, and then on the other side, you stick your fingers in there, and then you just pull up. There you go. Now we're gonna remove the screws that hold the power supply in. You're gonna need a Torx T8H screwdriver for this job, which we sell on our website, and also a Phillips screwdriver. We sell both of these, and the links are gonna be in the description box. So we're gonna remove the Torx screws that hold the power supply in. I'm gonna lift this piece out, put it on the side. We're gonna need a knife for this part. I'm gonna remove these stickers in the back, like so. Then we're gonna remove these two Torx T8H screws, which you can only open with a T8H, not a regular T8. And again, we sell that on our website. We also sell a complete electronics repair toolkit, which includes this screwdriver and many other screwdrivers that you need for electronics repairs. I'm gonna get those two screws out of the way. First, we're gonna lift this panel up here. This is the hard drive cover. And then we're gonna undo this Phillips screw here so we can remove the hard drive. Once we remove the screw, we can just pull and the hard drive is gonna come out. There's a final Torx T8H screw here that we're gonna remove. And now we're gonna remove this back panel off, like so. Ooh, okay, you can see the dust come out of this console right here already. All right, let's see what we got behind door number 1. Jesus Christ. This has to be one of the worst cases I've seen in a PS4 Pro. That's the bottom cover right there. That's also filthy. So I'm gonna get rid of some of this dust before I proceed. All right, I only got rid of some of it right now so I can get to where I need to get. And then we're gonna give it a nice clean when we're putting everything back together. All right, so I'm gonna start disconnecting the fan connector. We're also gonna start disconnecting the disk drive cables. These ones pull out like I'm showing you guys right here. The last one, the big one, that's got a clip on it that you're gonna lift like so. And then you're gonna pull this cable after lifting that connector. We're gonna remove these antenna cables. There's 3 of them here on this side. You're gonna lift them out. And now there's a bunch of screws that we need to remove. Some of them are Torx T8 screws, and then the rest of them are Phillips. we're gonna remove the Phillips screws. Now that we've got all the screws out of the way, we're going to remove this ribbon cable that connects the power button assembly to the motherboard. That was the last cable. There's one more Phillips screw here. I'm going to take that out. All right, now, before we take this piece off, we're going to flip the console over. We're going to keep holding this plate because we don't want it to fall off right now. I'm going to flip it over. And we're gonna remove the power supply. All right. We're gonna lift it from the front slowly because there's a cable that attaches to it at the front here. All right. You guys see this cable? We're gonna remove this connector right here. We're gonna pull it out, wiggle and pull. Take your time with it, and it's gonna come out. Right, so we're gonna flip the console back over. We're gonna keep holding that plate because it is loose at this point. All right, now we're gonna lift this plate off. There's a cable here that's in the way. All right, we're gonna take that cable out. It's the antenna cable. We're gonna put it back in later on. There's gonna be a covering on the heatsink clamp with more Phillips screws. We're gonna remove them. We're gonna lift this piece off at this point. All right, now we have access to the heatsink clamp. There's 4 screws that hold the heatsink onto the APU chip. We're gonna gently lift this piece off. Be very careful around this area. And then we're gonna lift this piece off, which is a backing for the APU chip. I'll lift this piece out. Now the motherboard should come out. There's this cable for the power connector. That was for the eject button, which I already removed. And now this is our motherboard. It is filthy. There's a few screws that we need to remove. There's this one here, this one here. So we're gonna remove those 2 screws. Okay, and exactly what I predicted. Look at all that. All you see is dust. And I'm gonna peel some of this off for you guys. Look, that's what the heatsink is supposed to look like. But right now, it is just caked with dust. And all the PS4 too hot videos and my PS4s and airplane memes that you guys see, it's because of this. This is what causes it. This dust in the heatsink. And on the PS5, they've improved their design where you can access this heatsink and clean it out just by removing the top cover. You don't have to remove everything. So Sony has learned from their mistake. But yeah, like I said, all the memes, all the jokes about my PS4's an airplane or it's gonna land on Pluto. I've seen some of your comments on my videos too. They're pretty funny. It's because of this dust that gets clogged up in the heatsink. Yes, look at all that. That's all the dust that was blocking the heatsink right there. The compressed air can in this case is not gonna work because this is beyond that. So this needs a deep clean, so I'm gonna go do that right now. But if you do need a compressed air can, links in the description box. You can use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. So I'm just gonna take the fan out and give it a clean. Also the frame and the disk drive needs to be cleaned as well, and the motherboard of course. But we're gonna take the fan out by removing these screws that hold it in. There's 2 of them. And yeah, so we're just gonna make sure it spins freely, which it does. So we're gonna reuse this fan, but we're gonna give it a good clean. In some cases, the compressed air can that we sell might work, but in this case, that's not gonna cut it because the dust is sticking onto the fan. And we're also gonna remove the disk drive here. Drive should come out. So I'm going to be back after cleaning all of this mess. My assistant is cleaning out the frame. I'm going to clean the motherboard, and in this case it can be put in an ultrasonic cleaner, but since most of you guys are not going to have an ultrasonic cleaner at home, you can do this job with wipes and rubbing alcohol. And you want to make sure that all of the liquid is gone before you reinstall the motherboard, because as you know, any liquid on the motherboard is bad. Same thing with the disk drive. We're going to use rubbing alcohol to clean this disk drive, and then we're going to clean the desk and then reinstall everything back into the console. Same thing with the power supply. We're going to use rubbing alcohol to clean this out. Since there's a lot of sensitive components in here, you want to be very careful that this is completely dry before you put it back in. So I've cleaned everything, including the mid frame, the case, the hard drive, the board, disk drive, the fan. I've cleaned out all the components, so this should be running it like new once it's all put back together. Now we're going to put on thermal paste on the APU chip, which is a very critical part. And for that, I'm going to be using Arctic Silver 5. For this job, we're going to be using Arctic Silver 5, which we also sell on our website. Link's going to be in the description box. And the best way to apply this is to apply just a little bit. And as you notice, I've cleaned the APU chip as well. I've removed all the extra thermal paste from the previous factory application, which was terrible. So we're going to put just a small amount. Probably about this much for a chip this size, because too much paste is not good. So we'll go a little bit more. There you go. That's about the most you'd want to use. And so what we're going to do is we're going to spread this paste around evenly on the chip without getting it outside the lines. And boom, that looks like a pretty good even spread. You want to put a little bit more in the middle because it is going to get spread out once you put it on the heatsink. So that's what your application should look like when you're done. And now we can install the motherboard back into the system. All right, so now we're going to start installing the fan in the frame, which I've cleaned out. This looked crazy dirty before I started, but now it's looking a lot better. And I've cleaned out the fan as well. There's a little bit of thermal damage here, so that's not dust, that's thermal damage. I could not get that out, but the fan is also a lot better. It's looking a lot better than it was before. I'm gonna put the fan back in and we're gonna install, there's two screws that hold it in. There's one here, and then there's one here. All right, once we've installed the fan, we're gonna install the disk drive in, which has also been cleaned out. And install the screws that hold it in. The long black Phillips screw that goes in here. And then the smaller Phillips screws that go in here. Now, we're gonna install the heatsink back on, which goes on top like this. This side goes in like this. This block should go in here, which, as you can see, the heatsink's been completely cleaned out. I know you guys remember what it looked like before because it was a complete horror show, but now it's been cleaned out. And we're gonna put the heatsink back in. The back goes in first. You're gonna wanna make sure these cables don't get in the way. I'm gonna get all the cables out of the way. black one here, this white antenna cable, the ribbon cables for the disk drive. I'm gonna get them all out of the way. And then you wanna put your heatsink in. We're gonna put the 2 screws that hold the heatsink in. One of them goes in here, and one of them goes in here, which also holds the fan in through the heatsink. All right, so now we're gonna put the motherboard back in. And once you've installed the motherboard in with the application of the thermal paste that I showed you, once it's been put in, it should look like this. It should be evenly spread on the heatsink, but that's only after you've installed the motherboard in. I've installed it once already and then removed it to show you guys what it looks like. And then we're gonna put the motherboard back in. The back goes in first to side with the ports. I've left this cable attached. I'm gonna remove it for you guys so it makes it a little bit easier. So we're gonna remove that cable. We're gonna put the motherboard back in. Make sure it sits properly and evenly. Now we're gonna install the heatsink screws in. I'm gonna install this piece. Install the heatsink clamp back on. And we're gonna tighten these diagonally one at a time, slowly. You're gonna do a little bit one at a time and in a diagonal fashion where it goes across. All right, install the back plate that goes on the back of the motherboard like that. Now we're going to install the back plate on, which should also align perfectly with these plastic pieces that come through the mid frame. Now we can start installing the cables back in. We're going to install the fan connector like that. We're going to install the antenna cables. It's gonna line up, you're gonna feel it, and then you're gonna push down. At this point, we're gonna install the ribbon cable connectors back in for the disk drive and the eject and the power buttons in the front. You wanna make sure these are pushed in all the way up to the blue line. This one's for the power button here on the front. This one's for the eject button. And now we're gonna flip it over and install the cable connector that we removed. Like that. We're gonna put our power supply in, which was also cleaned. We're gonna install our connector in like so. Push it in, line up the power supply. There's pins under the power supply that you wanna make sure that are lined up. We're gonna put this piece back in. We're gonna install the long torque screws that go in. We're also gonna install the other torque screws. There's 3 of them that go here. There's 2 long ones that go here. All right, I'm gonna flip it over. Install the rest of the screws back in here. That's the last screw. Now we're going to start installing the case back on. Nice and clean. All right, and then we're going to push the back in. And make sure it lines up. I'm gonna make sure these pieces right here line up where the screws go in. And then we're gonna make sure everything clicks. And now we can install the top case back on. The back goes in first, like that. And then we're gonna push it in till the front clicks in. We're gonna install the hard drive back in, like that. Gonna install the Phillips screw that holds it in. Once we've installed the hard drive and the screw in, we're gonna install the Torx screws that hold the case in. Then we're gonna install the hard drive panel back on. It's gonna click in and we're done. And as you can see, the system's a lot cleaner now than when we started. So now I'm gonna plug the console in and turn it on. Make sure that it turns on, which it does. I'm gonna put the customer's game disc back in here, which I took out earlier. It's going white light, which is a good sign. I'm gonna let it sit and let it run for a bit. But as you can hear, it's already running a lot quieter than it was before. All right, it's been running for about 15 minutes now, and you can barely hear that it's on. So I'd say that's another successful job from Fast Tech. And again, guys, this repair is sponsored to you by our Fast Tech Pro toolkit, so do check us out. And for the rest of the tools and parts that you need for this job, at www.fasttechstore.com or fasttech.ca. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.